Welcome to the No Budget Filmcast, where we dip into the independent film universe to highlight those little films that you might not have heard about elsewhere. Will you agree with our panel? Or will our panel agree with each other? Tune in to find out. I am Milo Dennison, and with me, as always, are my excellent co-hosts Claire Milan.
Hello.
And Cathal Feeney.
Hello.
All right, Claire, what's on the agenda this week?
So this week we sat down to watch a film called Utopia. It's written and directed by Kosta Nikas, and it's starring Will Gabriel, Adam Hatzimanolis, and Magdalena Stamos. So it's a sci-fi short film about a man called Jack who has come back to Australia after a decade away living in paradise. And he comes back and the country is completely changed. Citizens can report and fine each other for various infractions using their mobile phones and upload offences to a government app. So he arrives back and he meets his friend Frank, and then they go home. He brings him home to his wife, Margaret. And in the house, there's cameras everywhere. So swearing is banned, and alcohol, and even the home, they have a little computer. And if you say anything that like swear, you automatically get a fine. So it builds up and people have to pay the fine. Otherwise they can't you get discounts to supermarkets, they can't get loans, they can't leave the country if they're in debt. But the only place that's safe and there's no cameras is the bathroom. So they can go into the bathroom and they can drink and swear as much as they want. So I thought this was a really interesting film because it could happen. It was very like kind of a Black Mirror episode, but you can imagine a world like this where in this world there is no police. So everyone is looking at each other, and I think that's happening already. The thing about Facebook came out recently, and how they're monitoring. We know that already, how everything is being monitored. Like you say something out loud, all of a sudden you're seeing ads for it on your computer. And I just thought it was a really well done little film, and it's really interesting cinematography as well. Because when you arrive at first, when you see the film at first, you know, okay, this is a sci-fi, and the airport looks interesting, and everything looks kind of normal but slightly out of place. And then he accidentally drops a scarf, and a granny comes along and she takes a picture of it. And you can see her sending it off somewhere, and him being fine. So it's introducing us to that world. And then I love then is when he's in the car, you think, oh, okay, there's something a little bit odd. And before he starts the car, his friend starts the car, he presses the middle of the steering wheel, and this breathalyzer comes out of the middle of the steering wheel, and he has to blow into it to make sure that he hasn't any alcohol in his system. And then the car, because otherwise the car won't start. So all of a sudden you're like, wow, that's crazy. What type of world is this? And as the film goes along, it builds up and it shows how controlled the place is. And then you see there's one scene as well where they're all on a beach, and there are people lined up, and they can't swim between, I think it's 9 to 5. So they're waiting for 5 p.m. so they can go into the water for 5 minutes, and the clock is ticking down, and they're allowed in for 5 minutes. So everything's controlled. And they mention as well about so he says that artists were supposed to turn the mirror on society, but instead they turned the mirror on themselves, and it became a selfie. And he talks about like artists just giving up, and it's turning into a very controlled world where people aren't challenging stuff. I really enjoyed it. I think some of the script was a little bit too obvious and on point, and that probably didn't need to be a little bit too much exposition that didn't need to be there. But I thought it was they created this really interesting worlds that could come true. And I kind of at the end of it, I was thinking, God, yeah, it's scary because this is happening already with us being monitored. And will this be in 50 years' time? Will this be the case, or people can report each other? So what did you guys think of it?
Yeah, I mean, they certainly weren't subtle in this film with
Yeah.
the statements of this could happen kind of stuff, and the message in the film. But it is true, and it's kind of funny to think about it because you talk to people and they're like, "Yeah, I know Facebook monitors everything I do. I don't care because I don't do anything bad." Or, I know like the government might listen in on my phone calls, but I don't say anything bad, so I don't care, and without really realizing that how things could be interpreted, and suddenly something like that could happen. And it usually is the young people that protest stuff like this. The older crowd's kind of like, yeah, whatever, it doesn't affect me. And so it's definitely spot on. I It reminded me a little bit of Demolition Man, the old Sylvester Stallone movie, where every time you swear you get like a little fine and stuff. It's so kind of a little cross between Demolition Man and 1984, which is one of my favorite books by George Orwell. I love that book. It's kind of basically the same, saying the same thing, that like we could turn into a police state if we don't do something about it. And I think it's true. We certainly see it in a lot of ways, maybe not necessarily to the extreme of this film, but that doesn't mean it couldn't happen. I like the idea that I could just take a picture of somebody doing something wrong though, and upload it, and then they'll get a fine for it, because I would do that every time I see somebody litter. It'd be fantastic. But then somebody would do it on me every time they see me speeding. So there's the downside.
You know, it's like when there's a lot of dogs around here where I live, and when dogs go to the
Oh yeah.
toilet,
Mm-hmm.
and people walk off.
Exactly.
And you're
That'd be
like,
another good one.
oh,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny because it nearly happened to me on a bus once. There was a man who's just slightly his a crutch. He's on crutches, and there was a disabled seat. It was free, and he said, I was like, "Oh, sit down, sit down." He said, "No, no, I'm getting off next stop." I said, "Are you sure?" So I sat down on the disabled seat while this man on crutches was standing beside me, and I thought this woman with a mobile phone was filming me. But because she
Oh.
didn't hear that the disabled man wanted me, insisted I sit down, but she didn't hear that because I thought she was filming me. So it looked from afar, it would look really bad, but it was completely innocent. But no, I don't think she was. I'm just thinking that's happening now with social
Could be a
media.
case.
People are posting stuff up and shaming people, and it's scary.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. Absolutely. So,
But yeah, I was gonna make that point that it is happening already to an extent, like with shaming on social media and kind of pylons and so on. And well, like we came, well, I did anyway, came to sort of social media, Facebook and so on, sort of uh, in when I was sort of mature. But like for young children and young adults, they're putting all this kind of stuff online, and then or maybe in 10 years or 15 years that they'll regret it, and also I don't think it's fair. Maybe I'm getting into a bit of hot water here, but wasn't there a case in Austria about some child who sued their parents because of they wanted them to take down all the kids' photographs they put up on Facebook.
yeah, I did see that.
They didn't get his permission, or her permission. I'm not sure. I think they won the case too. But with regards to this film, I'd actually seen it before. I'm not sure what I thought. Maybe I'll pick that someday. I I wasn't sure really what to make of it. I mean, it was very much hyperbolic. It was over the top kind of depiction of this Big Brother kind of type sort of society, and it is true to an extent. We are sort of living it already, um, and as bad as we think it is here, like there are countries already that are worse, like China. They have like facial recognition software, and Singapore. I was on reading today where they have these robot patrols now going around breaking up people who if they're standing closer than 5 meters apart. So like with authoritarian societies, the implications are a lot worse. But at the same time, I think there are extremes at sort of both ends of the spectrum here, because you will have people who will take things too far and become like unbearable, society, take away your freedoms. But then like you have people who do behave like assholes. You said, Milo, and they need to be called out. And if you think back, like for instance, your personal, you talk about your personal freedoms, and if people talk now with vaccines, it's their personal freedom not to get a vaccine. Well, okay, well, what about the personal freedoms of everybody else in society not to get sick? And you would have had, say, drink driving in the past. Maybe it was a personal freedom to get behind a car, socially drunk. And that thing with the breathalyzer, I'm sure, does that exist already, or is it something that's already?
I know a guy who got a DUI in the U.S. and part of his probation afterwards was that he had to have one of those installed in his car, and so he had to blow into it before he could start his car.
Yeah, that's actually, I wouldn't have a huge problem with that. I mean, like obviously, maybe it's kind of a jar, but like if you're drunk, you're drunk. You shouldn't be driving, and that's that. Like as for the film, yeah, like it was very well done. I have to say, like they kind of realized the idea very well. I noticed that everything seems to be very minimalistic, very kind of sterile. That this wonderful utopia actually isn't. And just looking at the picture behind you, Milo.
Well, that's the thing.
That again,
like, so they're finding all these people money for stuff. They're not paying for a police force or anything. So where is all this money going? Because it's not going to, infrastructure.
That's kind of a jarring point, isn't it? That it doesn't seem to make sense with regard to the rest of the film. But,
it's very true, and it's kind of, there's really sad moments in it. You feel really sorry for the husband and wife, and then the music then makes it kind of really overly happy. And yeah, well, actually never thought about that. Where is the money going? Yeah, I don't know actually, because obviously it's not going to the infrastructure. Yeah, it's crazy.
It's going for this. It's going into the software.
Probably, yeah. Or the people monitoring the stuff somewhere. Oh yeah, people are monitoring each other, but maybe there's technical people somewhere.
And also the problem with this idea that you can't trust anybody or anything, that you have these conspiracy theorists now that they see kind of sinister activities in everything, that they just don't trust the government at all, and they'll use it as an excuse for for everything and anything, really. So there is a sort of a medium, happy medium, like we say. We all have our smart devices, and we have made this compromise. Okay, we have this huge convenience, this huge addiction, and we're prepared to give up our anonymity, say, for it. Yeah. We'll see how bad it gets.
Yeah, because like I think similar in Ireland as it is here, like there's a lot of traffic cameras and stuff, and there's a lot of CCTV cameras in central London and everything. And somebody was talking, they were complaining about in the US about like the government's interfering in my business. I'm going to go move to the UK. And somebody responded to him. They're like, yeah, move to the UK where You can't own a gun at all. There's CCTVs everywhere. They have socialized healthcare. Like all the things that all these conservatives in the U.S. bitch about. Go move there. So there is that balance. You definitely where we need a government. Without a government, it would just be chaos and anarchy. And the government needs methods of controlling the population, balanced with the ability of somebody to actually be in their home and live their lives and not, get fined for swearing and stuff like that.
It's interesting. In the US, don't they record everything, the police? Like I remember when I was in the US, I went up to a policeman just asking for directions or something, and one of them tapped him and they pressed the record button. Do you know?
Oh, some areas like the certain police.
Is there body cam?
Yes,
yeah,
the body
cam.
cams. So they're starting to implement those, and I'm all for that. I think they should have them 100%. I mean, especially with all the police brutality that happens in that country. Like if they don't, they shouldn't question it at all. And the only reason why I think a lot of the police don't want them is because then it's makes them liable for their actions. So that's exactly it. That's one of those balance things. Sure, maybe turn it off during your lunch breaks and stuff like that. But anytime you interact with somebody of the public, record it. It covers you and them. So that way there's no question about what happened.
It's very sad because that murder case, Gabby Petito case, and they had recording of when they stopped her and her boyfriend, and it's just desperately sad.
Yeah, but actually, speaking of desperately sad, I think London has the most CCTV cameras per square meter than anywhere in the world. I could be wrong about that, but that Sarah Everard case, that might not have been solved if they hadn't had that CCTV.
Yeah. And it was so clear as well, because they could trace her everywhere nearly. It was very,
Yeah, exactly. Like, so that's the balance. So, it's a good film for that aspect. I mean, it gets us talking about it. And Claire, I did what you usually do, which I normally don't do, which is read the comments underneath in the video. And it was kind of funny because everybody's like, oh yeah, I could see this happening. Oh, da, da, da. So everybody's like, oh, we need to worry about this kind of stuff. But not too many people were like, there's an aspect of some good, not to this level, but of there is a value in being able to monitor what people are doing, and catching criminals is absolutely.
And it was interesting to both the topic of the artist and the way they said, like, people aren't filming other things, they're just turning things in themselves, which is quite an interesting thing. So that artists should look outwards, not inwards, and people should, rather than taking selfies, if we don't have art to challenge people, to show people, like a writing and to make, maybe to inform people, then what do we have?
Yeah, I think you do have that art. What you have now is that everybody's almost
given too many opinions. You know what I mean?
Facebook and whatever, and you have this sort of influencer culture, but there are people who are serious, proper artists, if you want to say, who are still critiquing the society, the world we live in, like this film.
Yeah, it's important to still have that.
But we also have cancel culture now too, where writers and public figures are afraid to speak and question stuff out of fear of getting canceled.
And when they do, we all know what happens. It happens to a lot of people.
Rating time?
Okay.
Yeah. I'll go first, since it was your pick, Claire. I think it asks all the right questions. It's a little bit too blunt, but I think it's beautifully shot, and I'm all for it. So I'm going to go 4 stars.
Okay, I'll go second. Was extremely well made. Interesting angle. It's. I'm sure somebody else has done it too. I think I remember seeing a Kino film very similar to this a couple of years ago. There was something about it though. It was just a little bit, I don't know. Like the other guy, the cool guy, maybe he's just a little bit of an asshole, and a little bit. Obviously, he represented normality, but I think maybe they were pushing this message a bit too much. But anyway, 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I thought it was really well made, and it's a film that will make you debate about what's going on in the world today. And I always love the Australian humor as well. Yeah, for me, is probably a little bit blunt at times, a little bit forward, but I'll still give it 4 stars because I really enjoyed it.
There you have it, No Budget audience. We liked the film, so check it out. We'll throw the link out there. You can let us know what you think on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Feel free to leave a comment, share, and like, and all that kind of stuff that people say at stuff like this. And with that, we'll say see you next time, and stay tuned to see what we're watching. Goodbye.
Bye.
But
water went down the wrong tube. There we go.